Greetings, greetings, greetings. You're watching Black Thought, and I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson. Glad to be on this platform one more time, and I appreciate all of those who support what we do. Let me do just some quick housekeeping. If you want to know who I am, and you want to figure out who is this that's talking to you, feel free to go to my website, noelhutchinson.com. You know how it's spelled, NOELHUTCHINSON.com to learn more about me. Okay, enough about me. Let's get into the crux of what we're going to talk about today. There's so much that could be discussed, so many things that are happening in the midst of our nation. But let me just speak on this one subject. Maybe I came up in a different time. Maybe I came up in a different era. Maybe I was taught differently, but my upbringing is of such that you support the ones that are connected to you. So if you're married, you support your spouse. And whatever arguments you may have in your house, you don't take them outside of your house. When you have siblings, you support your siblings. Maybe they get on your last nerve, but the world does not need to know that you can't get along with your brother or your sister. If I'm in your church, whether I'm your pastor or just a pew member with you, I don't need to go to the barber shop or beauty salon and run you down. I don't need to talk about the pastor. The folk that are not in the church really don't need to run the pastor down in the church. Don't need to do that to members either. But I need to begin to treat others the way I would like to be treated. And when I say that, be clear on what I mean. There may be some that don't quite want to be hugged on, don't quite want to be addressed the way you are, but if you generally look out for the good of others the way you would want them to look out for the good in you, then you are living as you ought to live. I start this way with this subject because a lot of times when you start talking about things that are seemingly political, people think that you may be coming from a perspective because of your political leanings. Can't dissuade people from that. People hear what they hear. And we are in a time of selective hearing. We are in a time when the news is not even the news anymore. I just finished watching the last installment of The Loudest Voice on Showtime, which talks about Roger Ailes and how he put together the Fox News network. And it is appalling, to say the least. Some of you watching this are saying you're already politicizing the situation. Well, I would encourage you to watch the series and then come to your own conclusion. But here's where I'm going with this. Representative Elijah Cummings from Baltimore is a Democrat. President Donald Trump is a Republican in this season. Now, you have to do your research to understand that he was a Democrat close to the time, up to the time in which he decided to run. And it was to the point where I think two of his children couldn't even vote for him in the New York primary, because there you have to declare your party allegiance long before you vote in the primary. It's not like Tennessee, where you can get to the voting booth and then when they ask you there which race you vote in, you pick one. Well, it's not like that in New York. So a couple of them couldn't even vote for their father because they were Democrats. He, at one time, recent time, was a Democrat. But be that as it may, that's getting too much into the minutia, too much into the truth. Elijah Cummings, Democrat. Donald Trump, or Donald J. Trump, Republican. Right now, you have the drumbeat of impeachment starting to stir up against Donald Trump. Elijah Cummings appears to be, because of his involvement and his chairmanship of various committees, seems to be involved in some of that. I'm just painting with broad strokes on purpose. So now, Donald Trump gets up early in the morning, as he does, and spews his thoughts and partially runs the government through Twitter. And so he decided to say that, and I'm paraphrasing, that Elijah Cummings ought to concentrate on his district, which is rat infested, and no one would really want to live in that district. This is what Trump said. Matter of fact, let me see. I'm going to Twitter right now so I can quote this and you all can see it. He tweeted on 7/27/19, "Why is so much money sent to the Elijah Cummings district when it is considered the worst run and most dangerous anywhere in the United States? No human being would want to live there. Where's all this money going? How much is stolen? Investigate this corrupt mess immediately." That's what the President of the United States tweeted. Now, there's an article that has come out in the Washington Post. Now, some of you may say the Washington Post is politicized. Well, whether you agree with them or not, the Washington Post does practice respectable journalism. And yes, I know about the sister that made up the story, and that's in the past, but it got caught. But the bottom line is, they try to give you responsible journalism. What they did is they show you the actual demographics of this district. That this district actually is one of the more prosperous districts in the country. It's in the 61st percentile on median household income. I believe this district also includes, if I'm not mistaken, PG County, Prince George's County. There was a White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, coming out of South Carolina's 5th District, who used to be over that district, is in the 22nd percentile for income. But he gave disparaging remarks about Elijah Cummings' district. Now, granted, yes, there are some poor sections in Elijah Cummings' district. But here's the major point. Beside the fact that what was said wasn't really true, you are the president of the country. You're not just the president of the people that like you. You're not just the president of the people in Appalachia. You're not just the president of the 1%. You're not just the president of the people that watch Fox News. You happen to be the president of all of us. That is, whether you're on my side of the table or your side, the unfortunate reality. You are our president. And so, if there's a portion of this country that does not live up to, quote unquote, your standards, instead of being disparaging about your country, instead of talking ill about your siblings, your kinfolk, because you're our president, maybe you ought to be working towards doing something about some of these conditions instead of saying we need an investigation. What is HUD doing, for example, to help these deplorable conditions that you cite? What are other government entities doing? What is Representative Cummings not doing? No specifics on that. This is not a good look when fingers are pointed in this way. And you basically call out a segment of the country and try to disgrace them because you have, quote unquote, a political axe to grind. That's not a good look. And I'll say this, Baltimoreans and people across this nation, you have the right to be upset with hearing this. You have the right to be upset. This is unprecedented coming from the lips of a president. And there are some who will say that he's not intelligent. No, he's quite intelligent. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's playing divide and conquer so that he will have a good chance in the next election. He does not care about some of his constituents. Let me put it this way. I was not a fan of Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan understood that he was the president of all the people. Was not a fan of George Bush Sr. or Jr., but they understood that they were the president for all the people. Every president that we've had in recent memory has understood that they have to govern those who voted for them and those who did not vote for them. But Donald J. Trump, who owns a mansion and a yacht, he doesn't quite get it. So here's where I'm going with this. It's enough to vent. It's enough to say this president is incompetent. It's enough to get upset and get all on social media and talk about how he needs to be removed and jump up and down. But you know what? You live in the United States of America. There are elections taking place locally in the fall where you live, and there is a national election taking place next fall. Perhaps your energy can be devoted right now to getting out the vote, to helping to educate voters on the importance of local elections, on the importance of this national election. Perhaps this is the time to leave the lethargic landscape to someone else. Perhaps this is the time you say, you know what? I can't take any more of this president. Let me do what I can do, excuse me, so that we can have a change. Let me kind of break this down to you so you can understand where I'm going with this. Many of you are watching me in Tennessee, others of you in other places. Let's say, for example, you're from Memphis. You probably have kinfolk in Chicago. You probably have kinfolk in Detroit. That's Michigan. You may have kinfolk in Philly. That's Pennsylvania. See where I'm going with this? You may have kinfolk in Milwaukee. That's Wisconsin. The last presidential election was decided in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin. And the voting numbers of people that hit the polls was far less in 2016 than it was in 2012. What's your point? Right now, you can begin to influence your family members to prepare to make a change, both locally and nationally. You can do that right now. And you can tell them, if you're really upset with the person who occupies the Oval Office, then you need to gear up to do something about it. I applaud the efforts of Up the Vote 901, the People's Convention, and others who have tried to do some things locally. And yes, you may not agree with them in total. Yes, you may see quote unquote flaws in what they do. Yes, but guess what? They're doing something while we sit back and Monday morning quarterback. The issue is you have to get involved in local, state, and national elections, because if you do not, you let somebody else decide the course of your destiny. Is that really what you want to do? So let me back up as I get out of the way. Your president is going to say something else that upsets you in the next few days and in the next few weeks, guaranteed. Because he has a track record of doing that ever since he has occupied the Oval Office. So it's a fair assumption to say that he's going to do something else to make you upset. So the question is, are you just going to vent because he makes you upset, or are you going to prepare to do something about it? And yes, I know many of us that are listening to this, we live in states that are blue, quote unquote, for Democrats, or as I do, in a state that's red. And we may feel that our vote doesn't have much sway, but I beg to differ. Your vote has a lot of sway, but do you exercise it? And do you get others to exercise it as well? Remember, and let me go back over this for the slower ones in class. Not knocking you, you just don't get this yet. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all of those were blue states in 2016. But because those that were blue didn't go to the polls, they turned red for Trump, and the margin was threadbare. And you still want to say your vote doesn't matter? With all the black folk you have in Michigan, how did Donald Trump win Michigan? With all the black people in Pennsylvania, and yes, I know the state, the major cluster of black people are around Philadelphia. Then you have a smaller cluster in Pittsburgh. And then the rest is pretty much red. But see, you can't go by the geography, you have to go by the numbers. The overwhelming numbers of residents in that state are around Philadelphia and around Pittsburgh. That state has historically been blue for decades until 2016. So how does that happen unless complacency set in? And I think Conrad Belcher, in crunching the numbers, he's a strategist, said as much. Same thing for Wisconsin, although the numbers there are a little closer. But see, here's the thing. If Trump didn't win all three of those states, he wouldn't be the president now. And in local elections, we have a mayoral race. Some say they don't want Strickland. Well, if you don't want Strickland, you have at least two choices. Are you going to vote, and are you going to get others to vote to ensure that your candidate wins? Do you want Dr. Harrington to win? Well, you got to ensure that people vote for him. Do you want Tammy Sawyer to win? Again, you have to get out the vote. Now, I will tell you this, that there are those who try to refute this basic fact. But the reality is that here in Shelby County, people that are 55 years and older go to the polls. Now, granted, the numbers in every demographic are not acceptable, but basically the older folks go to the polls. So now here's what happens. They vote on memory. And they vote based upon sometimes how they're directed to vote. You know those ballots? So they get a ballot, they go in the polls, they vote. People who are 54 years and younger don't vote as much as those who are 55 and older. Now, I already know there's some that are younger that are getting upset as to what I'm saying. Well, again, if you don't like it, there's an easy solution. Get out the vote. Prove me wrong. I don't have a problem with that. Get out the vote. So again, let me go back and then I'm out of here. Repetition is good for emphasis. You hear things and see things you don't like. You hear it from your president. And in terms of local elections, I just said something that I know some of you don't like, but it's the reality. And if you think about how campaigns are geared and how campaigns mobilize, they are mobilized around the older voter. They are mobilized around the tried and true voter. They're not mobilized to get additional voters. So the challenge is to figure out how to get additional voters to the table and get them to vote for your candidate. Now, I know you don't like to hear that, but it's the truth. So the issue is, when you see something, when you hear something that you don't like, what are you going to do about it? And my basic point is complaining is not sufficient in the 21st century. All right, time for me to go, and as I go, brother, man, sister, woman, young boy, young girl, put your mind in gear and put your thinking cap on. Peace.
Hi, I'm Deidre Malone, the host of Dialogue with Deidre. You can find us on the M1 TV network on YouTube. Subscribe and follow us. You can also find us on Facebook at M1 TV Network, Twitter, M1 TV Network 2, and Instagram, M1 TV Network 2. Please follow us so you can keep up to date with what's going on the M1 TV network with Dialogue with Deidre and Black Thought.